Welcome, everybody, to the Small Business Tech Day. Excited for this keynote with Keven O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. Keven, how are you today?
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so Keven, I have a couple questions that I want to go through that I'm sure a lot of our SMB owners that are on here today would like to know from your point of view. And the first question is, a lot of you've said that companies must learn how to leverage technology and automation to stay competitive and grow with the current labor shortage. Can you talk about how you and some of your portfolio companies are doing that?
Sure. What happened, particularly during this last 36 months, the pandemic years, is that a lot of how business is transacted and the distribution channels have changed dramatically for most consumer goods and services. And this is why data and being able to use technology to mine it has become so important. Prior to the pandemic, most companies that made goods and services had a distribution channel that looked like this. 50% went through American retail, the big box retailers, Walmart, Target, Bed Bath & Beyond, et cetera, and they made 50 cents on the dollar on that. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's a good and well-refined distribution business. And then over the last 17 years, Amazon became 40%. And so many companies have relationships with Amazon. It's a slightly better business. You make about 55 cents on the dollar, but you get no data in terms of who's buying your product or service or why. And you don't get data from the retailers either. And prior to the pandemic, most companies set up their own websites, but it was really for marketing. It was a money loser, and they did 10% of their business online direct to their own customers. That's all changed because we had a basic collapse of the distribution system, particularly in the first 2 years of the pandemic. The surviving entities have moved to almost 50% direct to their own customers. And they did that by mining data, by finding out who bought their product, when they bought their product, what product they bought, their preferences for size, flavor, color. And that was all made possible by technology. And for the companies that didn't know how to do that, well, they're the ones that aren't with us anymore. They're out of business. And so it's not an option anymore to do this. This is 100% required. It's an essential service. It's a must-have. And if you're not doing it, your competitor is, and stealing your customers, because customers are now getting used to being fully serviced direct from the product or service company that they're using, that they endorse, that they want to support. And these relationships end up being really powerful, very sticky, very valuable, because the margins on a direct-to-consumer basis are as high as 80%, not 50%. So you could basically almost lose half or a third of your customers and still make the same amount of money. If you lose them from retail and you gain them direct to you, you make a lot more money. So this isn't an option for my companies. I don't say you've got to get this right. I don't even invest in them if they don't have this right.
Wow, that's powerful. You've also said that in the pandemic, lockdowns forced people to rely on tech like Zoom, for example, and it fueled the remote workplace. Is remote workplace here to stay? And do you believe that businesses should embrace that remote workforce? And why would you say that?
I think that is one of the greatest questions of our times. It's an excellent question to ask. And let me answer it with data, with actual information. We've got about 10,000 people in our supply chains and the companies we've invested in. And so every quarter, we're trying to find out what's changing in terms of our costs. And prior to the pandemic, one of our most expensive costs was real estate. We had to do back offices, and most of our companies are headquartered in places like New York, Florida, Texas, California. So we're looking at our leasing costs for just the number of people we're employing. And so we made the assumption that prior, to the pandemic, that these would continue. But then in the middle of the pandemic, when everybody became very comfortable about working remotely, and they had 2 years to prove their productivity and did, we ended up in a situation where we realized some percentage would not return. So in this 24 months ago and then 12 months ago, we were trying to figure out what should we budget for 2023, the year coming up? How much real estate do we not need was the question. So we made the assumption last year that 15% would not return to work. And we thought primarily they would be in the areas of accounting, compliance, and logistics. The people that often worked in cubicles in the basement. Why would they want to come back if they can do their job and do it out of a much more open environment, so to speak, and stay in the suburbs, raise their kids, take care of their parents? And if they can do it productively, we thought 15% wouldn't return. Well, now we have the information. 55% are not returning. 55, more than half.
Oh.
We are slashing our commercial real estate because we don't need it. There are office buildings in New York and Boston where a third of them are empty right now. Those people are never coming back. Now, I know there's this idea that we have to force them to come back, that right now, because we're almost at full employment, that the employee has the power, but that's not the truth. The truth is, the good people in the economy, the people you want to work with as a team, you've got to be flexible in terms of what their demands and wants are. If they can live 100 miles, 200 miles away and have twice the standard of living, have a safe place for their kids to grow up and good schools, and then give you full productivity as a remote worker, why wouldn't you embrace that? So I have taken on that motto and that matrix and that protocol for all of our businesses. We are now adjusting for the new reality. And just because I grew up in a time where everybody worked in a cubicle, that doesn't mean my kids are. And so if you're so stubborn-headed that you can't understand that, that will be a competitive advantage for your competitor. They will figure that out. They will get the better people, and you will end up losing talent. That's the bottom line from my perspective.
So I'm going to follow up on that, with the remote workforce. Does that change things as you mentioned around compliance or more cybersecurity funds? I mean, with them not being in that physical office, I think a lot of SMB owners think that they're more vulnerable, more at risk. I mean, are you doubling down then on the technology side for security and compliance?
Absolutely. That's the whole point. You're absolutely right. If this strategy is forced on you, and it sounds like whether you like it or not, you're going to have to deal with it if you want the best people, you're going to have to figure out what technologies and what partnerships you have to be secure in how you work. You need good, secure, high-speed internet connectivity with all your employees all around the world. We have employees around the globe. We have security systems in place. We have backups. We want our data in data centers that are on our nexus, on our soil. I think one of the great revelations that occurred when Russia invaded the Ukraine was Russian tanks are rolling over data centers. Nobody cared where their data was stored anymore. That's not the case anymore. Government agencies, businesses, they want to know where their data is. They want to know it's secure and it's safe. So all of this is happening on an accelerated basis. You want security, you want backup, you want to know where it is, and you want to make sure that it's efficient and functioning and the best you can get. Our biggest spend in 2023 in terms of growth costs is on technology, and I consider it an essential competitive weapon.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a second. So a lot of the people that are on this call today, they're SMB owners, and a common thing we hear in the SMB space is like, look, I've got 5 to 30 employees. I'm not a target for cybersecurity. I'm not a target in the compliance space. I mean, would love to hear your input to the SMB owners that, they think that they're not necessarily the target, but we know, like, you see portfolio companies that are pitching you at Shark Tank, they're 1, 3, 4, 10 people companies. Can you elaborate on the investment that they are a target, or are they not a target when it comes to cybersecurity?
Every company, every individual is a target. If you're using a credit card for business expenses, you're exposed. We groom and look at every single online transaction in all of our companies, and we reconcile them every month. We're constantly finding all kinds of hacks, whether they be large or small, and fixing those and going after whoever did it, or at least trying to get the refunds from our partners that protect us. This is an ongoing war. We are at war forever with people that would rather steal your money than do it legitimately, than do business with you. And that's just one area. And the other thing to concern yourself with is personal information about your employees. You have to have that. You have to have payroll data. You have to have all of this to be compliant with regulators and the tax authority. You don't want that hacked. You don't want anything hacked. So the fact that you're going to save money on commercial real estate, there's no question about that. You're going to redeploy that, but you're just shifting your costs over to where you have to. And you need technology so you can gather information about your customers. We haven't even talked yet about customer acquisition costs, another area where technology is crucial. But my point is, this is a change in the income statement. You need security, you need technology, you need information. You have to go to bed every night knowing that this information is as secure as you can possibly make it.
Yeah, so I mean, let's talk about, one of the next things we hear is budgeting. So as an SMB business owner, what should I be looking at? Like what percentage of my revenue or my budget should be allocated towards technology, cybersecurity? I mean, do you have a rule of thumb that you use?
It's difficult to say because each sector is different. I mean, the point is, if you're selling, let's say, I'll give you an example. You're a commercial kitchen and you're selling cupcakes. I have one of those in my portfolio, a wildly successful company, one of the fastest growing in America, just got bought by Hickory Farms. Their whole issue was protecting customer data. So they spent a lot of information because they found out when a family bought cupcakes and purchased them for their college kid and sent them on their birthday, and they sent a 4-pack there, they then knew when that family would buy again for the next holiday, for Thanksgiving or Easter or birthdays or whatever, and what flavors they used and where their child was at school. All that information was extremely valuable because they could go back to the family and say, look, we know the birthday's next week. We have a special for Brad or whoever it was. They had all that data. But what they wanted to make sure was that it never got hacked. That would decimate their relationship with their customers, and they grew them by the hundreds of thousands. That's the whole point. So their budget went from 2% to over 12%, but they were richly rewarded for that expenditure. The whole idea is you're not spending this money and wasting it. It's not going down the rabbit hole. You're becoming a more powerful company with a much more direct relationship with your customer. So it's not a crazy budget expenditure to go back 10% if you're mining data on it. So, the idea that some fractional small cost that you're buying some accounting package, that's not how it works. That's just a tiny fraction of what you're going to be using. You need a CRM system. You need to have a communication and a database with your customers. You have to have security, and you need information dashboards that tell you what's going on by the hour. What's happening in your business by the hour? A week ago in this hour, what did you sell? What were your expenses? All of this is data. Business is data. Data is the new oil. You can't have it without technology.
Yeah, I want to go back for a minute on something we talked about a little bit in the beginning. We'd like to expand on it. A common thing too that we see is like, look, there's a labor shortage. It's harder to find talent. Where do you see this going over the next 3 to 5 years in terms of the labor shortage?
I don't think it gets better. I think the demand for skill sets around technology, around social media, around marketing and online advertising, all of these are in high demand for all 11 sectors of the S&P. I don't care if you're an airline, a company that mines ore, whether you're selling marketing services, it doesn't matter. You need the same skill sets to find your customers and communicate with them and maintain a relationship with them. This is swept through the nation. It's swept through every sector of the economy. It's swept through every S&P 500 company. So all of these people, many of them tend to be young and let's call them hip. I mean, who knew 24 months ago how important TikTok would be to so many of my companies? Nobody had even heard of it then. And it came roaring on the scene. And that 59-second video now is incredibly important for product information. And it's completely different than what gets posted on LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. They're all different. And so those skill sets that actually market to these platforms where there's hundreds of millions of people are very desirable. And you need someone in your company that understands it.
Yeah, so I totally agree with what you're saying. But now if I'm an SMB owner, I mean, how can I leverage how can technology help fill that gap with some of the labor shortages, with some of the new trends and the things that you're seeing? How can we leverage technology more to potentially fill a spot where we normally would have a human being?
Well, there are lots and lots of technologies that are cloud-based now that do the work of what human beings used to do. And I'm not saying it's good to replace human beings. There's a special reason you would want them, but you can augment and be more productive. I mean, I'll give you an example. Before the pandemic, our portfolio companies in aggregate, when we met, they're private, so we're looking at two things, the revenue and the free cash flow. So prior to pandemic, a really good year, we'd make 15% pre-tax on free cash flow across 50 companies, 50 plus companies. That was a great year. This year, we're going to end at 17.5% free cash flow. How did that happen? Well, we adjusted for the new reality. We increased our business direct to consumer using technology. We became more productive. We cut our costs in real estate, and we picked up 20% more free cash flow. And so that's not just us, that's happening across the S&P. So you've got to figure out, what can you do? I mean, if you really think about technology now, regardless of what your business does, you're always looking for the next incremental dollar. You're always looking for the next incremental sale. How are you marketing? How are you reaching out and letting people know that you exist and you have a product or service that solves their problem? The only way you can do that today is through digital marketing and advertising. It's one of the most important. It's 2/3 of the ad spend. How are you doing that? So the great thing about digital marketing is, if let's say you're going to spend $1,000, you should be able to make at least 1,200 back from it. And the thing about digital marketing is you can immediately measure that. So the importance of doing that is you don't need more people to do that. You can have the same person doing it, but you have to have somebody who understands how to mine that information and measure it. And that's done with technology. So it's better to invest in technology that can measure the return on that spend. Should that $1,000 be spent on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on LinkedIn, on Twitter? Well, you have to test. And the whole point is, there's lots of technology that will let you do that. That's the concept here. And there's plenty of advisors who can help you with this, but it's all measurable. You don't have to throw it into the wind and wonder if it worked. It's all measurable. And that's why we can be more productive than we were just 36 months ago.
Yeah, so looking into 2023, a lot of the SMBs are wondering, how bad is the recession going to get for the small to mid-sized businesses? And what do you see that those SMBs can do to thrive with that potential, recessionary downturn?
That's a great question. This is the biggest issue of small business today in America. We represent 60 to 65% of all jobs created each 12 months. So it's very important for us to get this right. We are the engine. The majority of the economy is driven by small business. Our biggest challenge in the quarter we're in right now, we have 3 extra selling days this year in holiday. And across all my companies, we're trying to fine tune our inventory, because when you take cash and turn it into goods and services or products, it's captured in that product. You've got to resell it again to bring it back to free cash flow. So the idea that you get more business direct to consumers ends up being incredibly important, because when you have a direct relationship with them and you know when they buy it, where they buy it, and what price they're willing to pay for it, and their preferences in the flavors and everything else, if it's a food good or something, that lets you fine tune how you put your capital to work, because you don't yet know how deep the slowdown is going to be. And the worst situation would be to be caught with too much inventory in a dramatic slowdown of consumer purchase. That would be very, very difficult. But at the same time, it's also a crime not to have the goods and services ready when people want them. And the big surprise for this quarter was, just 2 quarters ago, people thought we'd be in the midst of a recession right now. That's not the case. Yes, interest rates are going up, but consumer demand has not slowed significantly. So it's very perplexing. The shift of goods and services caught some of the big retailers offside, like Walmart and Target, when they had too many large screen TVs, for example, when people started to go out instead of staying in their homes locked down with the pandemic, and they started selling more bicycles and whatever else it was. But the point is that is the magic in managing your business, is to try and anticipate both sides, the upside and the downside. And the only way you can do that now is with the use of technology. You can't divine it with a crooked stick. You have to have the information. You have to have it, and you have to know what it looked like last quarter or last week or last year, and what the preferences are. Take, for example, my wine business. I have to anticipate 64% of wine in America is purchased by women. 97% of wine is purchased for under $14.99 a bottle. How do I know that? Because I have the data. I'm using the technology, and I'm shipping direct to 42 states. That's what happened to me over the pandemic. And right now I'm seeing a trend in Florida, which is one of the key states where you can find the preferences that are shifting. And a wine variety called Moscato is taking off. It's an ancient sweet wine that was first grown by the Romans. That's how old it is. But Moscato is on fire in Florida. That means it's going to go on fire in Texas and New York and California soon. I have to react. I have to be ready for the purchases that are going to be happening in Q1, Q2 of Moscato wine. There's a real use case of, if I didn't have the data, if I didn't know what they're buying in Florida, I'd be blind. I wouldn't know what to do with the capital.
Yeah, so this maybe leads into this a little bit. I'd be curious, are any of your companies investing into the AI? And what does that look like? Because I know a lot of people, you see it all over the news, AI, invest in it, help you. I mean, what's that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to make, AI sound so complex. It isn't. AI for small businesses like mine and yours is about data mining. A lot of this data mining dashboards that give you real-time information is driven by forecasting models that are built into AI. So when you start to query, what should I build for next month, or whatever that product is, very often the AI is doing the work for you, going back and looking at traditional or past purchases on a particular region or customer or geography, and what prices they were done at, and then putting in other information into a mix, and then trying to figure out what inventory should be placed in that market. That's the kind of thing that is now very inexpensive versus what it used to cost 5 years ago. AI forecasting and dashboarding for inventory control management used to be something only the S&P could afford. But now for less than $15,000 a year, you can have it as well, all cloud-based services. You have to train people on how to use it, but I can guarantee you your competitors are doing it. They are training people. I mean, this is not the message. I every quarter I drive this message home to my CEOs even more. This is not an option. This is not something you can ignore. If you do not understand this, your competitors will eat your market share. They will eat your business alive, because they'll be a better and will have better relationships with your customers. They will steal your customers. And so there's a war going on for customer acquisition, and the only way you can optimize it is to understand the data. And AI can help you, but you don't have to be a coder. You don't have to write this stuff yourself. These are services you can buy, and you need a technology partner to implement it and maintain it for you. And the more you understand how to use it, the more you can forecast what you need and be much more productive in the use of your capital, and much more efficient in driving cash flow to your bottom line. In a private company, what matters is cash flow, as I like to call it, cash flow. That's all I care about. How much positive cash flow can you generate? That's what matters. It's not one of the items, it's the issue. It's the number one goal.
I want to change gears for a second and talk about compliance. We're starting to see and hear from not just SMBs, but I think every business around the world saying that their companies are having to make changes in the way they operate to stay compliant with laws and, all the different things when it comes to privacy and security. I'm sitting here today as an SMB, like, what advice do you have for me as it relates to the world of compliance?
Compliance is the result of many factors, but you're right, it is a growing cost. Let's just start with payroll. Think about how important payroll was during the first 6 months of the pandemic, when the government put programs together that allowed you to tap into their resources, but only if you had up-to-date payroll records. Well, about a third of my companies didn't. That's not the case anymore. That's being non-compliant. They should have had it. They should have had it ready for the tax authorities, but they didn't. They simply didn't invest in that. You need to have your statements prepared immediately at all times, because you never know when you're going to get audited from the IRS, for example. We know the IRS has now been gifted with more capital to make more audits. Whether that's good or bad on small business, it's going to be a new cost. And that is all around the concept of compliance. So you need records, you need information, you need to be compliant, you need very, very accurate payroll records. And all of that is basically part of the compliance package and the reporting package. And so you need to buy a system, maintain a system that will grow with your business, and make sure that you're never offside. The minute you're offside, and biggest compliance for small business is around taxes. It's around state and federal taxes. You've got to get that right. The minute you flag an audit, that takes away 30% of your day. It's just a completely unproductive use of time to be in a debate with the government about what you owe them in taxes. I always say, pay your taxes, but be smart about it. Be compliant, optimize for it, get great advisors on this, but use the technology to make sure your reporting is right up to date.
Yeah. So to go into a little bit more on compliance, one of the things we hear from a lot of folks is like cyber insurance policies. Are you seeing, meetings within your portfolio around your cyber insurance and making sure that you guys are proactively taking care of the things in case an incident occurs? Again, going back to that, I'm an SMB, I'm not a target. It's one of the things that we hear a lot in the SMB industry. I think when it comes to cyber insurance, though, a lot of SMBs don't realize you got to take proactive steps to your technology and to those different things. I'd like to hear from you, from a cyber insurance standpoint.
I definitely buy cyber insurance. It's a must. For me, it's just remaining compliance. I have to have it. But I even spend more on making sure I can't get hacked. Cyber insurance doesn't stop the disaster of being hacked. I mean, what occurs, it helps you recoup costs, but you're going to lose relationships with customers. Your business is going to be down for some period of time. You don't want that. You pay for the insurance in case of a catastrophic outcome, but you invest more in making sure you can't get hacked and making sure your systems aren't vulnerable. Understand where your customer information is and how it's protected. That's absolutely crucial. It's just absolutely crucial.
So I want to go into, a couple of things. I'd like to talk to you for a minute about, what do you see, what do you look at when you're investing on Shark Tank? We'll go to the Shark Tank angle here for a second. What are you looking at when an SMB comes in and presents their idea? What are the things that are important to you that you're looking for? Is there like a commonality across them? I know we heard cash flow, but are there other things that you're looking for?
Yeah, the first thing I ask, and you see me do this on every show, particularly in the last 3 years, is, do you know what it costs you to acquire a customer? Show me what that cost is. And I will only invest in companies that know their customer acquisition cost. And what I want to see is, think about this. If you can prove to me that your customer acquisition cost is below their lifetime value, in other words, you know what they're worth to you when you acquire them, and it costs you less than that to acquire them, then all I have to do as an investor is pour gasoline on that fire. So you're saying to me, okay, give me $1 million because I want to grow my business. And my first question is, well, what's your customer acquisition cost? If it costs you more to acquire the customer than they're worth, then I'm just fueling a bankruptcy. I'm just moving the goalposts. Instead of going bankrupt next month, you take my money, you burn it, and you go bankrupt next year instead. That's the whole deal. The whole deal is to use technology to understand how to acquire a customer, maintain a customer, and profit from that relationship. Then investors like me feel comfortable of taking the risk, because then it's just executional skills I'm investing in. Either you have them or you don't. But a business model that doesn't have the understanding of customer acquisition cost, or the technology to acquire them, or the understanding of how to use digital ad dollars, that's uninvestable. That's going to zero anyways. So I'd rather not be involved in it. You can be a really nice person and come on Shark Tank, and that's just wonderful. But, this is about business. And if you don't understand the train that's coming down the track to run you over, then I don't want to be on board with you. You'll get run over by yourself, not with my money.
Yeah. So I want to dive into something you just said a couple minutes ago, is that you pay more to make sure that you don't get hacked. And can you go into that from your mindset? I know you kind of gave an outline, but I'd love for the SMBs that are here today to really understand, because I don't think that's something that we hear a lot, is to pay more to not get hacked. Like, what do you mean by that?
Okay, so let's think about these scenarios. You buy cyber insurance, great. Then you go to bed thinking to yourself, oh, I'm sure, that's fine. No, you're not. You're not fine at all. When you get hacked, or if, let's say it's ransomware, a classic small business, they these guys, these hackers from all around the world go after small business all the time. They just adjust their ask. They figure out what you're selling each year and they go for 20% of it because they know they can squeeze your head for it. That's about the max they can pull out of your blood, but it'll kill you. I mean, it's going to either put you in debt or it's going to put you out of business, but they'll go right to the last cent if they can. And so if the insurance can help you after you go through the claim, but you're going to lose a month, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks of productivity. It's going to kill your business. What you're not thinking about is when you get hacked, they shut your business down. And some of these hackers are more insidious. They're your competitors. They want to steal your customers. They're hacking you to steal your customers. You don't know it, but that's what they're doing. There's so many different scams out there, all kinds of scams. But the minute you get shut down, you're not focused on your customers anymore or your business. You're focused on trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. That's 110% of your energy. What a waste that is. So my whole point is I'd rather pay more for the probability of that to be zero. I want the probability of being hacked to be zero. Can never be zero, but for the 1 or 2 or 3%, then I've got the insurance. That's great. But the insurance does not stop the shutdown of your business. That's my whole point. You have to get hip or wise to these hackers. They're never going to stop. They want free money. They're getting more and more sophisticated. They're from all around the world. They don't give a damn about you. They couldn't care less. And they move on one after the other. They'll hack 5 businesses in a day, 10. They're sitting in shops in front of screens all over the world just going after you. Just because you're small doesn't mean they can't rip your business to pieces.
I mean, are you seeing it? I mean, do you have like anybody that like you've invested in or other small businesses that you're seeing, just get completely destroyed by hackers that didn't think that they were a target? I mean, do you have any firsthand experience in that?
Absolutely. They're not 100% destroyed, but they go through tremendous, turmoil. And it really affects we get reports all the time of the revenue and the free cash flow. When we see a catastrophic reduction in top line from one week to another, I know exactly what that is. It's a hack. That's it. It's so easy to see it. Boom. Their servers are down. They're not getting their orders. Their orders are being redirected. Whatever the hell is happening there, it's not good. And generally, it's a technology problem. It's a hack, or it's a shutdown, or it's a collapse of something. And we find out what it is. Obviously, it's traumatic. We try and recover from it. We're investors. We care about it. But it's always because they had very, very lax systems in place. So now you have to be proactive. You can't talk enough about this because people just want to ignore it. It's like they just don't care until it happens to them, and then they get decimated, and then they understand how important it is. And sometimes it's really traumatic.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good advice. And we're getting here close to the end. I have a couple other questions that I wanted to kind of look at. Is let's go from that. What do small businesses need to do to adapt quickly and use these next few years to leapfrog their competitors that maybe are unwilling to change? There's people that said, I'm stuck in my route. I built my business like this for the last 30 years. How do I come in and potentially leapfrog them over the next couple of years?
Implement more technology and find people that have the skill set to use it and mine data. That's basically the big change that's going to happen. That's what big businesses are doing. That's what mid-sized businesses are doing. That's what small business has to do. The world is shifting so quickly on this issue because most customers all around the world have grown very, very comfortable with using mobile technology to buy their goods and services. Even a 90-year-old grandmother now knows how to use Instacart. Otherwise, she would have starved during the pandemic. She couldn't go out. Now she's comfortable ordering everything online, directly from you or from another retailer online. But the point is, you need to understand what she buys, when she buys it, what price she buys it for, and what her preferences are to keep that customer so that they don't go somewhere else. Customers that feel well serviced are extremely sticky. They're very, very valuable for the day you want to sell your business. The more customers you have that are direct to you, the more valuable your business is going to be when you eventually sell it. Those relationships are the building blocks of value for you and your eventual purchaser. The more you rely on others to distribute your products and services, the less valuable you are. So if you show me a business that's 100% direct to consumer, and they understand their customer acquisition costs, and their model is built on technology and it's maintained, I would pay much more for that than one that is old school, that doesn't know when the next order from their retailer is coming. That's what I don't want to invest in, and it's worth a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, and I'm sure a lot of the viewers and listeners that are on today, from Shark Tank, what was your number one technology investment? Do you have a company that stands out that was your best tech buy?
Yeah, it's called Base Paws. It was cat DNA testing. Who would have ever thought, when Anna, the CEO, and 75% of my returns on Shark Tank have come from companies run by women. So I'm very, very prone and biased to supporting women entrepreneurs for whatever reasons. It's just over 14 years that's the case. She came on 3 years ago, maybe it's 4 now, I can't remember the season, and she showed a test kit for $29.95. You can swab your cat, send it into the lab, and find out what to do about basically oral health. And the thing people don't realize is cats die very often from periodontal disease because you can't do a root canal on a cat. And if you don't feed it the right food, basically their teeth rot out. And you have to know that based on the breed of the cat. So the way to get the breed or what mix it is to get the DNA test. So instead of your tabby dying after 9 years, maybe it can last 14. That kind of difference is possible. Because I thought it was a joke. I said, why would I spend $29.95 on a cat DNA test when I can buy a new cat for $5? And that joke didn't go over too well with 100 million cat owners, but I bought into the deal anyways. And it was all about the data. She knew how, and so during the pandemic, there are more cats in America and more cat owners than dogs. 110 million cats. And people are very fond of their cats. They all have different personalities. And the idea that they could spend $29 to extend the cat's life, particularly if you did this testing in the early kitten years, was very, very powerful. But she did it all through direct marketing. She gathered the data. And then Zeotis, which is a spin-out out of Pfizer, approached us and said, we want to buy the company for cash. We want the data. You have all this direct-to-consumer data. It's incredibly valuable. Remember, I talked about this just a few minutes ago. This is where the value is. They paid well over $50 million cash for a company that had no sales when Anna came on Shark Tank. Anna is a wealthy woman today because she had the data, she had the technology, she had the direct consumer information, and she had really good customer acquisition costs. That simple. There's a use case for you to think about for your own business. Get the technology, get the data, make sure it's secure, and watch what happens.
So as we're kind of wrapping this up, what from Mr. Wonderful are we going to see? What are we going to see in the Something Wonderful platform in 2023? Any insider information you want to give us of what's going to happen on the platform?
You're at the cutting edge of this, but by sort of understanding that technology drives business, it's going to accelerate. I mean, every deal I'm looking at today, inside of Shark Tank, outside of Shark Tank, it's the companies that have really harnessed the power of these new technologies because the price of these things is coming down so quickly, these cloud-based services. I mean, it's just amazing in every sector. I was just looking at a deal this morning in apartment rentals, brand new technology, incredible yields, helping people in small towns all over America find rentals because the housing market's going through such a dramatic change and people don't want to live in big cities as much anymore. And they've captured that wave using technology. Everybody working in that company is decentralized. They're all over the world. Some of them have never met each other. That is the new America. That is what is coming. So, I mean, it really is important to understand this massive shift that's occurring. It's a massive, massive shift. It's happening very, very quickly. And I see it, and I've always thought that Shark Tank itself is 2 years ahead of the economy. The deals that we see are coming to market with 24 months from now. And most of the entrepreneurs, and some of them actually grew up on Shark Tank. We've had 2 generations of entrepreneurs watching us now, and many of them are now on asking for money from the sharks because they know what to ask. They've seen the show 300 times. There's 300 episodes plus out there. So the whole idea is that you need to embrace this, not fear it, embrace it, understand it, invest in it, and mine it for what it can do for you. Because I guarantee you this, your competitor is doing exactly that.
So what would be your final tip to everybody for the business owners that are on today as we go into 2023? I know we've talked about mining the data. We've talked about the technology. We talked about a lot of different things, and they've all been extremely helpful. What would you want to say to the SMBs of the world, as they get to embark into 2023? What should we be focused on?
It's a very simple question, and it's age old, and it won't change for the next 100 years either. To all of you that are running your business, and if I was going to invest in it, my first question would be, where is the next dollar coming from in sales, and where is the next customer coming from? How are you going to get them? Explain that to me, because if you don't have an answer to that, you're not going to grow. Growth comes by understanding how to accelerate what you're good at. If you can figure out how to get the next incremental dollar in the door in sales and the next incremental customer, you will never go out of business. The key is always the top line. Now, there's going to be pressure on margins, there's going to be ups and downs in the economy, but you're always looking for the next incremental dollars. Sales solves everything. Without sales, you don't have a business. Focus on that. And what's important for sales? The 3 great rules. The master you have to serve. Number 1 is the customer. Number 2 is the customer. And number 3 is the customer. You get up at 5 in the morning worrying about the customer. You go to bed at 1 in the morning worrying about the customer. That's what matters. Everything else will be solved when you do that. Everything, the good times, the bad times. If you understand that you serve the customer from the minute you start that business, you will never be number 1, never. The customer is always number 1. When you sell the business for a fantastic price down the road, it was because you served the customer. That's why you'll set your family free, you set yourself free, because you serve the customer. And then you're going to find that you don't want to retire, you want to get right back in the game. You're number 2 again, serving the customer.
Keven, thanks for joining us for the Small Business Tech Day.
Thank you, everybody. Now, stop listening to me and get back to work. All right, thanks. Take care.